Welcome to our March edition of Let's Get Growing, and we've got to get growing because it's heating up in the landscape. Let's prepare those beds for vegetables and flowers. Let's put in at least 2 to 3 inches of compost and till it in as deep as you can. You can even just hand turn it, but let's get it down 8 to 10 inches. In this month, you can also mow those freeze-damaged beds like Lyrope and Asiatic jasmine before they really pop out. They should be just emerging, so raise that mower all the way up, mow it, and take all the debris and put it in the compost. Well, I hate to say this, but this is when we start mowing, so mow as needed. The last 2 weeks in March, you're going to put out your pre-emergent herbicide and then again in 90 days so that you won't have weeds in your lawn. So we're going to divide those existing clumps of perennials, and you can see the list on the screen. Just make sure that you're planting those 8 to 10 inches apart. You have too many, share with a friend. It's good luck. So before you plant those perennials and share with a friend, make sure that you prepare those beds by adding 3 to 5 inches of compost and working into 8 to 10 inches deep so that we have good soil for these perennials that'll be coming back for you every year. You can also add 3 to 5 pounds of cottonseed meal or a time-released fertilizer, and that'll help kick them off and give them a good start. We can also add compost along with that cottonseed meal. Remember, compost in any bed is great, so 2 to 4 inches and till it in with the cottonseed meal, and any kind of organic matter in clay is going to help break it up. You're going to want to fertilize all your planting areas except for azaleas if you're lucky enough to have them, and then we're going to wait on our lawns just a little bit longer. Remember that many trees and shrubs are killed every single year by the misapplication of herbicides. Even weed and feed is not a good product for you to utilize on the lawn. You're dumping a contact herbicide on the roots. So make sure that you're reading and following the directions if you're utilizing herbicides. Remember that weeds indicate poor turf management. If you have a good, dense turf, you won't have weeds. When there's bare spots, what's the first thing that grows there? A weed. So if we have a thick, healthy turf, we're not going to have those problems. Now here's a huge list of plants that you can plant from transplants that'll give you early color. They probably won't make it all the way through the summer, but it'll sure give you a good start with bright colors this time of year. And remember, March 15th is our last average freeze date, and spring starts March 20th this year, so it's time. You're going to want to prune your spring blooming shrubs after they bloom. Remember, we held off in February and did all the shrubs and trees that didn't bloom, and now we're pruning those that have bloomed in the spring. Mulch all your newly planted spots and bare spots in the landscape, and make sure that if you're mulching around your trees, pull it at least 4 inches away from the trunk. We do not want anything up against the trunk on the tree, because if the bark stays wet, it's going to fall off, and then you have an entryway for insects and disease. Think of bark like your skin. Your skin is protecting you from disease and bacteria, while the bark is protecting the tree from insects and disease. Be careful of bare root trees and shrubs this time of year. It's too late in the season to be planting those, but you can plant ball and burlap and container-grown trees and shrubs this time of year. So, you know, the newest thing is succulents, and we're going to learn how to do a fairy garden, and we're also going to plant these. Are called living stones. Lithops is their botanic name, and you can see that this one is ready to go. You find a decent container. Make sure that they have holes in the bottom. I'm just using a regular potting soil that I've added some sand to. And then you put a little bit. When you're doing containers that aren't just round, you're going to need to fill the cracks and crevices before you plant. And then we're going to take this little baby, and if you see it's a little too tall for my container, that's not a problem. we're just going to gently tease the roots apart. So you see the roots are still on there. And this is a very interesting little plant because its leaves are actually these bumps, and then the new leaves come out of the middle and they bloom right here. They'll have a little tiny bloom on them, and you really don't have to do much except give them a lot of sun, a little bit of water when they're growing, and they usually grow in the spring, and during the winter they're just practically dormant. You don't need to water them very much at all. Sun is the biggest thing. So we can add a couple of rocks, top dress a little bit, and then how about some little baby mushrooms? Don't overdo it. Just let it be. Because remember, succulents don't need that much water. So we want to make sure that we're not planting them too deep. We want to make sure that we leave a little ledge on the side. This is burro's tail. And so when you're planting a container like this, you want to have your thriller, which is this calancho, your spiller, which is this burro's tail, and then your filler. So we have a filler, thriller, and spiller. And you can see that this one hasn't been potted up too long in this container, but that's all right. It'll do great in here. Succulents are not that picky about repotting. So once again, we want to make sure that we fill all the voids. We don't want any air gaps. And on this burro's tail, if some of these little parts fall off, they'll make new plants. Just throw them on top of the soil. So once you've planted, filling in all those little crevices, cracks and crevices in between them. Notice I'm not packing it down. I'm just pushing it in so that there's no voids. So there's a couple of ways that you can top dress. One is just by using gravel or river rocks. Or let's take it a step farther. This is called sheet moss. And you can buy it, it comes in a bag. You can find it at the craft store. And this, you can see, is the brown side is where it was growing against the soil. And so we're going to put that down, that side down, and we're going to fill in around the plants, just lifting it up a little bit. And now, here's our home. So who's going to live in this house? How about Mr. and Mrs. Hare? You can get as fancy as you want, or you can just put one little piece in. It just adds a little new dimension to your succulents. So there are a lot of things to do in March. I hope you can accomplish some of the things we've listed. And don't forget to feed the birds.